I'd like to welcome Dr. Tammy Jolly-Trotter as our keynote speaker today. She's also known as Red Wind Woman and Winter Bloom. She's a clinical psychologist and an enrolled member of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. She's the owner of the Indigenized Behavioral Healing Clinic that creates self-healing symbolism expressed through visual art. The healing journey in search of good medicine began over a decade ago through the personal medical trauma that left her detached from herself and others. And this journey led her to expertise related to Westernized and traditional Indigenous healing that she calls turtle medicine. She dedicates her career to harnessing the healing energy of creativity, cultural identity, resiliency, and leadership to mobilize those she works with to heal from trauma-related illness. She earned her doctorate from the University of North Dakota and now serves as an adjunct clinical assistant professor for the UND Psychology Department. With humility and gratitude, she acknowledges her elder Anishinaabe wisdom keepers who have shared their teachings and continue to do so. And so we welcome Dr. Jolly-Trotter.
Buju, Miskonu Dunikwe and Dishnigas, Kami and Dishnikas, and Winter Bloom and Dishnikas. Mikanakwaja Anishinaabe, CP Singh Dunji, Miigwech, Key Miigwech creator. And Miigwech to Dr. Duffield for inviting me here again. I'm excited to be here. What I did was introduce myself in my Anishinaabe language. That's one thing that I learned through reconnecting with and revitalizing through our community the need to express ourselves in terms of the native language that our creator blessed our ancestors with. So that was something that I didn't know until years later, I think when I was in college. That's where my first years that I graduated from Minot State. And I think that was my first introduction into how assimilated I was raised and how assimilated society was, because that was something that we didn't learn about. And even to this day, we're still trying to teach our kids what really happened to our people. And so part of my journey was not knowing how to really identify and take care of myself until I left the reservation and really found out how removed I was and unable to help others understand what it means to be Indigenous, because I didn't know enough. So when I introduced myself, that your spirit name is something that we're born with, and it'll come at different phases of your life. And I got mine when I was graduating from MSU because I went on a journey to find out more. And through that understanding and growth, I was able to channel some of my behaviors to align why I went into my doctorate, yet not even close to the level that I'm doing it now. And so I do want to introduce my daughter. This is Ayana. And I bring her up right now. She's here to help me. She's a psychology student. And so I was her age, actually. She's a junior in college. She's studying psychology. She came up with that on her own. And she goes to Concordia. And she's in her junior year. And this was exactly where I was when I started to realize I was living completely in a way that was told to me, that was presented to me, that was shown to me, and it didn't connect with me, not fully. And so I'm glad to have her here today because I've tried to do what little I can since she's been little to try to teach her earlier about our ways, but also to integrate who we're not only Ojibwe, we have ancestors. I'm French, Norwegian, Ojibwe, and Irish. So that's where it's a complex blend of all sorts of wonderful. And so when you listen to me, I come with a very unique perspective where they always kind of ask me who my target audience is. I said, it's everybody. I never talked to somebody who couldn't understand the language I was speaking, couldn't relate to the feelings I've had. couldn't relate to the way I process or think about things. So overall, I think every single one of you will walk away with something valuable because we all share human nature. We all have the same internal organs. We all carry this magnificent brain. And so I think the biggest thing is not focusing on differences, but focusing on how open can I be today to not get to know me. My goal is for you to get to know yourselves. And through that journey, I'm hoping that you can take that back to your classrooms or your classmates or your families and start to look at, I know this is about inclusion and resilience, and then to kind of look at it from a perspective where it's not your responsibility to help somebody feel included or to build up their resilience, but it is your responsibility to work on yourself. And so that's where I really want you to focus on what can I take away from this and just be open. And so I'm from Belport, North Dakota, and that was part of what I introduced myself, and that's the reservation. I was part of, I'm the first psychologist to have a private practice clinic in behavioral health on tribal lands. And now I expanded that. And now I've started the second clinic, which is Indigenized Behavioral Healing. And that's the first type 2 clinic. So now I'm hiring licensed professionals to join the team. So the goal is to get other people and other reservation communities in line with being sole proprietors, being in charge of your own destiny, and doing the kind of care that we feel works for our people. And not only our people, but we serve everybody. So inclusive for me means anybody is welcome to be treated in our clinic. I pulled up this picture today because that's me when my parents first returned home to our reservation community. They were off the reservation community. They lived in Seattle, where I was born, Alaska, Arizona. They traveled. And I was about this age when we moved back to their reservation for an opportunity for them to become entrepreneurs and open a grocery store. And now, when you start to think about how do you know like who you are internally, your true self, that's kind of the image of what I think I want to be, the lady in the skirt, teaching and learning. And sometimes I'm still not connected with that person. And then so this is what I'm going to talk to you a lot about. And that's why I pick up these two images, because we're going to talk a lot about how our brains and our thoughts and our feelings and our body are kind of conditioned to believe a certain thing. And there's only a short period of time when you think about the span of life. There's only a short period of time where our brains will absorb this information. And then we internalize it, we hold it in as if it's true. And that guides the rest of our behavior for the rest of our lives. And so I want you guys just to take a second, close your eyes, and really try to tap into yourself at age 2. If you're unable, age 3, age 4. When you start to see yourself, go ahead and raise your hand. Age 5. Age 6, age 7, last year. Okay, so now you can put your hands down. Really quick, I want you to take one of the pieces of paper and draw that image for me. I'm only going to give you about a minute to do this, so don't try to get too critical or demanding of yourself or expect too much of your artistic ability. If you had trouble even picturing yourself, don't worry. You're not alone. You're not abnormal. There's nothing wrong with you. And some of you, again, today I'm going to be talking a bit about trauma. And so there is a disclaimer that anything that I ask you to do, you don't have to do. If you feel uncomfortable, you can back away, you can step away. I'm not purposely trying to trigger anybody, but I would say if anytime you listen to a talk where somebody brings up the word anxiety, stress, trauma, that there's always a good chance somebody could get a little nervous inside. That's a reaction that could happen. And if you're okay with that, to not be afraid of it and move through it, this could be really helpful for you. Some of you though, it may feel too uncomfortable. And then, so that's when you want to take some time and step away. You can definitely go up to the waiting room and try to come back in. It's totally up for you. I'm not going to try to do too much because this isn't a full trauma talk, but just bringing up some of this and bringing you back a bit might take you to a place that you might remember. Okay, does anybody want to share? I just want to see maybe one or two of these. There we go, good.
Please don't judge by my drawing, but I thought about my grandma's farm
Oh,
and being with that's a cow and a bunny, but I vividly remembered my grandma and the time that I hung out with her at about the age of 6 or 7.
vividly remembered. I could tell that from your picture. Do you guys notice how she used different colors? She didn't just put herself, she put scenery. So her mind actually took her back there. How do you feel right now? How does your body feel thinking about being on the farm, being around grandmother?
Good, I haven't thought about her in a long time. So.
Okay, so what does good feel like? Your good is different than every single good in here.
What does good feel like?
To you.
Like, I don't know, I have a smile on my face because it just made me think of her.
Okay, a smile on your face. Okay. What does it feel like? That's what it looks like. What does it feel like?
Light.
Light.
Does that make sense?
Can you guys feel light? Okay. Anything else?
A little bit sad.
A little bit of sadness. Okay. Okay. Who wants to go next? Yay.
Again, don't judge me by my artwork. I can't draw stick figures that people can recognize. In my mind, I was 6 and I had just started school and I was so thrilled that there was a library. I loved books. So that's a bookshelf over there. And to this day, I love to read, and that's my happy place is in the covers of a book.
Beautiful. Okay, and I can see a really big smile on her face. I don't know if all of you guys can see that, but a big smile on her face surrounded by and in a dress. Do you remember the color of your dress?
No, but I can remember how itchy the taffeta skirt
It was itchy. Perfect. Okay, so those are the kinds of things that now the rest of you, you're off the hook. You don't have to share. But now you keep that image in your mind because it's bringing you back to a point in time when your brain, your subconscious, your level of awareness was really waking up, past infancy. You're ready to learn and you're trying to absorb what does it mean to be a human being. And to me, that feels like a lot of pressure when I look at myself right there and think, boy, that feels like a lot of pressure in these next 5 years, 2 to 7, to really try to internalize what kind of person I'm supposed to be. And I don't rely on myself for it as much, but I rely on others to kind of help me find that out. And so just thinking about those, we were able to actually pull up, not just thoughts, right? We were able to pull up feelings, textures. She even said she remembered how itchy her clothes felt. Some people felt sadness, even though they felt this warm light from being around her grandmother. Okay, that's how powerful our mind and our body, that's the connection there. She described it as if she was there, and so did you. And our brain doesn't know the difference. So when you were engaged in this, your brain was thinking you were there. So you were at that age, on the farm, feeling all of that. Brain thinks that's where you are. Then you come back here and it's like a rude awakening. No, I'm here. But then the brain, you have to guide the brain into shutting off a memory and bringing it back to present. Most of the time, where does your memory or your mind, your brain want to go? I guarantee you, some of you are thinking in here, I got this going on after this. Or, oh boy, this woman, she talked about grief. That was really, got me thinking about. So past, or what do I have to do after this? How many of you are really in this room with me right now? None of you? This isn't okay, come on. You guys all laugh, so I'm assuming you guys are here with me. How do you know you're here with me? I am fully here with you right now. I am 100% like into this. I don't know what I'm going to say next because I'm going off here. My presentation, I always do this. I'm in the moment with you guys. So how do you know if you're here or not right now?
I can feel what you're saying.
You can feel what I'm saying. Okay, that's beautiful. Tell me more.
It's with my breath. It's with the feeling in my chest. It's like that part of me is present with whatever it is that you're talking about right now.
Interesting. Okay, so like a physiological energy connection to what I'm saying. So beautiful. Anybody else feeling that right now? Right there. And I keep looking at you too, right? Okay, so my energy will be drawn to people's energy that's attracting good energy. And if we can learn how to be in an energy moment, every moment, you can attract those types of feelings because your body and brain, they want that. But yet it feels, a lot of us, it feels foreign. Why? Why do we want to check out and worry about what's next? Or check back and go back to maybe the farm where we felt really light and safe and surrounded by comforting things.
Because that's what we do every day, because we're on our phones, we're checking email, we're Facebooking. I could be on my phone and I'm not really in the moment. And I think that's a part of society now.
Okay, so that's beautiful. Can you say that again in that first sentence and instead of we, put I?
Because I'm always checking my phone. I'm on Facebook doing other things than being in the present moment.
Beautiful. So that's what you choose to do, right? Okay, and it's very normal what you did. I do some coaching with leaders, and even when I say like, what is your passion? Why do you want to do this? Why are you applying for this? What are you going to do with this? Once in a lifetime. This is the Bush Foundation. If you get this award, what are you going to do with it? And they go, well, we need to really look at addressing this. We have to start feeding hungry people. We have to start addressing. And then I go, okay, let's say that again. Cross out the we and put I. And so does anybody else have a statement of where you can think of that, where we put we instead of I, and why do we do that?
It diffuses responsibility.
Diffuses responsibility. Gosh, isn't that great? I used to run track in high school and I would always do the relays. Why? I'm not a strong runner, but so then you rely on a team. And then you never have to win or lose by yourself. You join as part of the team. Diffuses the responsibility. Okay. So that's where we're kind of looking at today, is really looking at how do we start to pull in and start to look at individually. Why do we start to do that? And so I'm just going to talk briefly a bit about this question. And I put it out there. I don't know if you're able to see a description of the talk, but I asked a question. I asked like 3 or 4. And one was, have you ever looked in the mirror and felt like not connected to your own reflection? A lot of you are shaking yes. Okay. And have you ever felt so disconnected that it felt uncomfortable? Okay. So a lot of people kind of ask me, what's the difference? I treat patients. I work in the clinic. Trauma is probably the #1 condition that I treat. patients usually don't present and say, I have PTSD. Usually, a patient will present saying, I feel like I'm losing my mind. I feel like I'm panicking. I can't function at work anymore. I'm scared. I can't sleep. I have a sick feeling in my stomach. Help me. You know, the main thing they want to do is what? What do they want to do when they're feeling like that?
Go away.
Make it go away. I'll do anything. And so when you're in private practice, it is nice because then you can work with highly motivated people, which is who I choose to work with, people who want to do the work to get better. Because can I make that go away for them? Okay. So when you start looking at, some people that do have an anxiety disorder that isn't based on some kind of trauma. Their body has learned to react in an anxious way. But this is one of the key kind of differences where when you have trauma, it's more likely that in addition to the general worry, fear, kind of feeling unsafe mode, you could also experience this depersonalization or derealization. You don't feel like you're in your own skin. Sometimes your limbs, you may feel detached. Arms may feel kind of numb or like you're not fully there. It can be a very frightening feeling for some people. Some people kind of feel like they're out of their body watching. And then there are people who are feeling everything, but no emotion. And they're very good at hiding that they don't have emotion, or that they're not, they're doing their best to try to mimic emotion. Do you guys, you have a lot of people like shaking head. So do you guys know somebody like this? Do you love somebody like this? Is this you?
Yeah.
This is, yes, okay. So this happened to me after the trauma that we talked about, and it's been 10 years. And I'm just briefly going to talk about what the trauma was that led to a journey of having to build up some resilience that I had no idea that I had. And so before we start this, on whatever piece of paper you have, write down your top 3 things about you. I can do this. I can get through things because I'm this, I'm that. This makes me me, and that's why I can do this. I'm grounded in knowing this about me, so I feel close to myself. I feel confident. Okay, who wants to share? I just want one person to share with me. What are your 3 things that build up you, where you know when there's something tough in life, you're going to have these 3 things to hold on to, get you through?
I am strong, self-aware, and inclusive.
I am strong.
Self-aware.
Okay, let's give me a little bit more about strong.
So,
You're physically strong?
well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, no, I think it comes from my past and being like my history and overcoming a lot.
Okay.
And so I feel like I have developed strength. So,
Emotional strength?
yes.
There we go, okay.
Yep.
Emotionally strong, okay, what was the next one?
Self-aware.
Self-aware, okay.
So I feel like these first 2 are connected, and if you would have asked me 5 years ago, these wouldn't have been on my list.
Right, because that when you're struggling with a severe form of that, because some of us can just have those moments here and there, but when it starts to get up the ladder where they're occurring more often, you lose self-awareness. And that's why I said it can feel very scary, because it looks like everybody else is fully aware and knows who they are and they're in their body and they're comfortable, and you're kind of watching yourself as if you were in a movie. just totally disconnected from the person that you're looking at in the mirror. Good. What else did you say?
I also said inclusive.
Inclusive, good. So let me take off what does that mean in terms of how you cope? Like put it in a skill or,
Well, I think now I'm like more accepting and willing to try different things to cope and like connect with others, where for a long time I wouldn't connect with others and I would hide and keep things in.
okay. Now see how that sounds versus the word inclusive.
Yeah, I like that.
I have the courage to connect with others. Okay. So now where you've seen those three things, everybody take them, where no matter how big or small they are, rip them all up. Not the picture of yourself, just pull out like that. And rip it however you want and whatever. There you go. You guys hear that? You feel that? I got some faces going, ooh, I can hear all these wonderful things just being shredded. Why are you doing that? I can see some people going, maybe you just don't like that sound. But kind of painful, right? How many wonderful things did we just rip up? And you didn't have you just did it. Nobody told me I don't want to rip these up. Did anybody? Okay. And because I said you do not have to do anything that you don't want to do, you don't have to. And that is part of, I want you to really think about this, that your brain and your body protect you, even right now. If there's something that's not supposed to go on, it'll just push it till later. So even when we're those little kids, when something went on that was tough, our brain pushed it away and said, you're not ready to deal with this. We're going to put it away. We're going to store it though. And then when you're ready, it will emerge. And so I always tell that to my patients, this is good that you're coming in because it means you're healthy enough to handle what's been hidden for so long. And I feel like that is the biggest piece of confidence that we can handle anything that's coming to us because our brain and our body, since we were in the womb, our mother's womb, has been through nurture, everything has been for us to survive and thrive and be the best that we can be. That's why I think the Lord, our brain and our body knows how to put stuff to the side. Okay, so that's one thing. Now keep those pieces, okay? They didn't disappear, they're still there. But I'm gonna tell you about a time I pulled out, I'm not gonna read it all, but through writing my story, these are some of the things that I've pulled out to try to help tell my story a bit. So this was over 10 years ago when I had my last child. And it was a time that I felt like something could go wrong. And I tried to do everything to control and prevent having a postpartum hemorrhage because I had a mild one with my son before. And it was actually right here in Fargo. So me coming here, I got to be very aware of that. That when we're surrounded by stuff that reminds us, every time I do a talk like this, I got to get in the right headspace and realize that stuff that happened even way over 10 years ago, if I really checked out right now, I would mentally be back there. Pregnant, ready to have a child, and then going through one of the most traumatic things I could ever experience in my life. And so this was a moment where I had a postpartum hemorrhage that was so severe that there was no way I should have survived. And it was really almost impossible for my daughter, but we both survived. And so I lost over 50% of my blood. And when I came to, after being in the medically induced coma, this is how I describe going and trying to look at myself in the mirror after that. And so the body, and I put it what I really remember is really kind of examining the body and going, okay, swollen, bruised, just horrific. But I thought, okay, everything's okay. And then the last thing is to turn around and then look at your face and really examine. And again, I thought, okay, this isn't too bad. But then I could see my eyes had this tingy yellow, and they had these little veins that were running all over. And everything didn't feel like me. And I said, my eyes changed. And I knew at that moment, this was 2 days after I woke up, that my body survived. It was mangled, but I didn't feel alive at all. And so this is what started a journey into how do you start to get back into your body when your body feels like the world around them just became the most unsafe place they could ever be in. So I was told, oh, we have this medicine, and she'd hope if you start to bleed, I'll give you this, you're done. You'll be fine. And nothing worked. No medicine, nothing worked. It just eventually stopped after hours and hours. And so that was a brain and a body trying to go, okay, how am I supposed to feel safe after my doctor told me that she had the fix and it didn't work? How do you ever trust your environment again? So that is where that thought, if anybody who's gone through a trauma, and remember there's huge traumas and there's traumas that they call little t's, they call them big t's. To me, it's your emotional, physical, psychological, spiritual reaction to whatever happened to you that defines the size of your trauma. So don't ever let somebody say, well, that's not that bad, because what about people who have gone through this? Or worse, don't do that to yourself. How many of you, and you just think about this, have done that to yourself? Well, yeah, I don't have to think, that wasn't that bad. Or gosh, am I remembering it right? I don't think it was really that bad. Well, it wasn't what my friend went through. I mean, that was horrific. So I should be okay to get over, this shouldn't bother me. Anybody relate to that feeling? Okay. So that's where your body starts to feel unsafe around the environment, and it mentally, physically starts to detach. And so somebody may then really struggle with where he said, I'm in the moment with you. Some of you may feel uncomfortable and you're detaching now. Sometimes we detach and start thinking about the future or the past just to get out of right here, because could be scary. Can you guys kind of see how that happens? Okay. And when that happens in therapy, it's usually when they start talking and their eyes go off and they disconnect. And I can see a change in even the color of their skin. I can see their breath changing and their speech. And so when they start to talk about something they've experienced, and I call it a hurt, an injury, whatever it was, they're not in the room with me anymore. So it's no different when I'm presenting. And so you have to call them back to the moment, back to the present with you. Because your brain, remember, just like when we went back to our first memories, your brain thinks you're there. Whatever you tell your brain, it affects your body and it will believe you. So if any of you are feeling nervous right now or anxious, your brain is telling your body, yikes, something scary is gonna happen. Or she might call on me and I don't wanna talk. You know, so that's the fear mode. And learning to shut that down, then you can enjoy this talk. If I call on you and you don't wanna talk, just say pass or shake your head and I'll move on. I'm not here to, like, so you can just let that fear go. Okay, next thing I wanna talk about, I'm gonna give you my 3 things now. We got, what was your name?
Fine,
Yeah,
Jessica.
Jessica. Jessica gave us her 3 things right there. That's to me where she feels resilient. Resiliency is our internal innate ability to adapt and change and survive. And so the level of resiliency that a person has, it's different for everybody. And some people can say, well, why did one child, they were all in the abusive home, why did one child go off and become a successful doctor and the other child was addicted to drugs? They were in the same environment. You guys, yeah, okay. We may do that with our own siblings, like, how did you do this? And why do you think you're wonderful and I think I'm a piece of shit? No, really, this is the stuff we compare and we think, how could that be? We ate the same things, we lived in the same house. Why are we handling problems different? And so it's with resiliency that when you experience a trauma, for me, this was one of my things. This is one of the things I do well. I do public speaking. I'm in the zone. I feel it. It makes me feel alive. It makes me feel healthy. So I can handle anything. This was over 10 years ago. Me. The other thing for me was I'm spiritual. God will not give me more than I can handle. I'll carry that cross. I can get through anything because I have God. The other one, I'm a mom. I have my kids. I can surround myself with people that help me be strong. Those are my 3 things. And then after this trauma, guess what happened? Without my permission. What do you guys think happened? When I returned home, the other thing I thought, I'm a psychologist. I'm trained to get through things. I know how the mind thinks, why we feel the way we do, why we behave the way we do. This is what I'm an expert in. I can get through anything that's difficult. What do you guys think happened when I returned home after going through this?
Postpartum depression.
Yeah.
It was not even postpartum depression. No, it was postpartum gratitude. I wasn't depressed because that would make me a horrible person. I survived.
I would say the ground underneath you wasn't as stable or steady
Oh,
as it
that's
was.
beautiful. So like you're grounding, right? Can you guys all feel your feet on the floor right now? Okay. How would you feel if this floor started to crack underneath you right now? What would you guys do? Just sit here and keep listening? This is so good. You want to get out of there, right? Where would you want to go? What if the ground was broken out there?
Yeah, I mean, it would be, do I have time to think about what direction? I mean,
You don't.
you don't.
You don't. You're
So
stuck.
you're just gonna move
And
and
the
then.
floor is about to cave in and you don't know what's underneath.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how I try, because some people in here have not gone through a trauma. They've had some tough stuff, and that's okay. Don't feel guilty if you haven't gone through something really yucky. Be aware that you will have a hard time relating to that feeling, and do something like I'm trying to do now to put your head around it, where everything that makes you are strong, are able to get through, was just ripped up. And then so I couldn't, after coming out of the coma, I was able to speak, but I still struggle with it, where I can't find the words. And I was repeating myself. And I would catch it. I'd be at work and I'd say the same thing kind of over and over. And I was thinking, what is going on? So my brain felt totally disconnected to my body. So guess what I didn't want to do anymore? I didn't want to get up and speak. It had taken something that was so, and it was easy. I take it for granted still, I think. And it was just taken. Wasn't gone, like I said, it's still there, right? But it was in pieces. The other thing where I said guilt, like I couldn't be depressed. That would mean how could you survived, your baby survived. You got 3 beautiful kids. What do you have to feel depressed about? So then you shut off that feeling. Go to your church. No. You can't have birth control. You gotta just leave it up to God if you have the next baby. And so I felt shaken in my faith. So I couldn't just go to God and say, oh, help me with this, because then I was in a difficult predicament. So that ground that she was talking about was exactly the way I try to describe it. It's like a tree, and all of the roots that made that tree strong were being ripped out. But that's what you keep going to. So you keep going to what you know used to work for you, and it's not working. And then you feel flawed and alone and isolated. Because everything that once made you strong has been ripped up and nobody can see it. Because physically I looked like I had healed. After all the bruising, everything went away. I looked like I was back. And what was of being a mom? I was dissociating from my kids. I was terrified to see my kids after this. Because then you think, what would you guys start to think if you almost lost your lives? Some of you may have had moments like that, where you think you would have had last moments. So then everything becomes fragile and scary. So what do? You shut down that loving piece of you that maybe makes you a good mom, a good friend, a good partner. Why do we shut it down? You're vulnerable. And vulnerable is like that when we talk about this, I put it in a mosaic to try to, because resilience, I don't think there's like everything in the world, you have to come up with your own definition of what it is. And resilience, through everything I'm learning about it, I hardly use the word. And so I had to really think about it. And there's a way to actually be too resilient. Some researchers, they call it like be anti-fragile. So you can be a mosaic that has a big, so you're in pieces, but it has this big hole and there's an opening, right? So how easy would it be to tear that down? Just break that apart with that opening there. Okay. So that's similar to this. If this is a pin, you guys ever tried to put a pin in something that's hard? And what happens is that you try it anyways? Like if I just go slower, it'll work. What happens to that pin usually? You're trying to get it in something hard. What happens to that little pin? What? It bends, right? So that's like trying to do something when everything you've been taking that makes you strong is taken away. But on the flip, how many of you guys can function like a nail? That's this one. So this is where I think society tells us, move on. Don't cry. Get back to work. You were off, I was on maternity leave for 8 weeks. I think I got an extra 2 weeks. Get back to work. You got patients waiting. Put your kid in daycare, get back to work. We all got to move on with life. People are really uncomfortable with other people's what?
Vulnerability.
And even further, what is
Pain.
Suffering, pain. Oh my gosh. How many of you guys are one of those people? Somebody's just really hurting, struggling, and you're uncomfortable around it. I bet you a lot of you are. And that's a normal reaction. Why would we want to be around somebody whose energy is full of pain? And they don't have the skills to even try to fake it. So how many of you think that you know somebody who then, instead of being fragile for a little bit, jumped right into super resilience mode and function like a superhero in the moment? It's like, good for you. Way to get back in there. Damn, you're good. That's reward, yes.
You're our rock.
You're the rock. Gosh, how do we survive without you? You just get back in there. And then what do you think happens to people who function like the nail? They're so resilient, you just don't know how they do it.
Eventually break.
Break.
I'm not certain, but I bet, or they work really hard to keep up that intricate design. And so that's where, yep.
Question, do you think the person who's on the left that has that little crack is gonna break earlier and learn how to deal with it better? And maybe quicker than the person on the right who's being that rock and just going out there probably to not deal with it, right?
Yes, and I think that we all need to allow this, and that's why it's kind of like this, where, and looking at it in the middle. So it's saying, how do I allow for ongoing growth and change within my resiliency? How do I let there be a big, awkward kind of whole space in the middle? But that one's actually the healthiest one, right? Because there's still room to be human, to feel, to be able to not fully do whatever is society or whatever you're calling, and mostly actually it's not society. Yourself, you're calling yourself to do. That's the number one thing I think patients say, well, I have to do this, I have to do, otherwise I'm not. And I go, well, who said? Well, my mom, no, well, but who's saying it now though? You're an adult. So they try to say, well, my mom said, or my, they've never, but who's saying it right now? You're an adult. Then they finally go, well, I'm saying it. So nobody's pushing people to be that except ourselves. And so allowing that no resilience isn't about another thing. It's not about being quick, and it is defined that in one of the definitions of it, maybe like the main one. It's to be able to bounce back quickly from adversity. That is not the goal. It depends on what the adversity is, right? But when it's something major, do we want people to bounce back right away as if it never happened? No, we want them to know it's okay to be broken for a while, and this is going to take some time. And the goal is not to get to perfection. The goal is to get to where you feel you can contain it and feel safe within yourself again. Allow beauty and allow hurts, allow imperfections. Then that becomes a new level of resiliency. So when we have traumas, and this is where some of you may remember stuff, and this is just normal memories too. But if it was, some of you be able to remember like details, like, oh gosh, I can remember this, that, and then it ended like this. But when something really traumatic and scary happens to somebody, whenever it comes to them, it's shattered, it's in pieces, and the timeline is all distorted. So they can get glimpses of things that may have happened, but it's coming out like this. So the brain and the body feels like there's no integration. And they can't do a narrative. Do you guys ever write your own, like people use that word a lot, like write your own narrative. To put that on somebody who's had trauma is really going to shut them down. Because how do they write something when it feels like this? Or how do they tell you something when they may not even have the words or a timeline? Some people, if it was maybe something that they don't remember happening, they're not even sure if their mind is making it up sometimes, if it's something from early, or if they were under the influence of something. So that's also something that the brain and the body can do. It can integrate stuff. And that's kind of where the work has to come, is relying on somebody else to help you navigate that yuckiness. And so this is a great book. The Body Keeps the Score. So some of you who are really into this, this is 30 years of his research. And I'm just going to pass it on. This was life-changing on how psychology, how we treat trauma. And it's what I've been doing for, all of my training, but I just now bought the book and read the whole thing. And it just, even again, to me, like put all these pieces of the work I'm doing and the work I had to do to rebuild myself after my trauma. And so it just shows that we can have all of these pieces to get better, even without having the full story. So when he says the body keeps the score, this is where, as a psychologist, I'm starting to realize I can only do so much work with some of my trauma people. And so this is where you start realizing trauma is stored within your body. It's stored within your organs. It's stored within the way that we even respond to the information we're taking in from the world around us. And so sometimes there's a lot of body work that needs to take place to retrain and get the mind and the body to communicate with each other again. So really, it's the body will create balance, homeostasis. And so when something happens, you feel off balance. But if you've been living a life where you felt off balance, under threat, that's your what?
Baseline.
That's your baseline, good. That's your norm. And so if you start to work through trauma and feel better, what's gonna happen? What could happen?
The baseline could change.
The baseline remains, it's because it's ingrained, it's been there so long, but the change then feels like, yes, instead of balancing, it feels like, oh gosh, now I'm really out of balance. How do I function without my system triggering constant threat? And this is where people have to really look at, how do I realign what feeling calm feels like? Especially here in our world where we want to busy and run and shut down. So in a way to really adjust to this, you have to be able to feel the quiet moments, to be in the moment. And so let's get back to when we're thinking about where did we start to feel maybe inadequate. Did we ever tell ourselves that there was something, if this happened, I couldn't live through it? I hear it every day in every patient will tell me at least one time, I'll go, well, what's your worst fear? So go ahead and write it down. You don't have to show it to anybody. And if you feel very anxious about writing it down, because that means you're kind of acknowledging it, you're okay to not. I've had participants come and tell me if I've asked them to do something and they mentally could not do it, that is okay. That's you listening to your brain and body. It knows what's best for you. And so if you tell yourself, I could never survive this, what do you think your brain thinks? And what message does it send to your body every time you worry about that thing happening in the future? After I had left with my baby, I looked at her every day I thought, boy, God knows, thank God she survived, because I would not have been able to live had she died. That was the thought. And then I look at all of my kids and go, I would not be able to survive losing a child. And then, and I'm sure some of you guys are putting some of those things down. And that's the tough work, because as soon as our brain thinks that, it sends, our brain is full, our mind is full, it's a circuit, it's full of energy, it communicates, it's a network. So it sends that fear and a lack of feeling you can survive to your body. And then it's interpreted as emotion. So even around, if you fear you're going to lose your kids, you're going to kind of disconnect from them even when you're around them. Because the thought of loving them so deeply, feeling all that love, and possibly losing it makes you feel like you would not be able to live. Does that all make sense? Yes. So guess what we have to start saying? And my patients, some of my patients will get very upset with me. It's called decatastrophizing our worst fear, that's our catastrophe. It's our worst fear. And some of us have one, some of us have many. Some of us live in constant fear. There may have been some of you who thought, oh, I can write down about 10 things right now. Anybody want to say, yeah, that's me. I have about 10 or 100 worst fears. And every day I kind of I remind myself of how I wouldn't be able to cope if all these things happened. Okay. So now to take that and rewrite that, what would we need to do to rewrite that so our brain stops telling us that we're going to physically not make it through our worst fear?
Well, I guess I would say to myself, or I should say to myself, I don't want this to happen. But if it does, I like the way I look at it, there's a magnet pulling me forward. You know, I would still move forward at some point, but you know, I mean, really, it's really hard to even talk about.
Even just think,
Yeah.
is it hard to find the words to describe the feeling of what that feels like?
Yeah.
Okay, that is very normal. And there are some people, that's how much we don't want to even think about it. We push it down. So scary to say out loud. And that's why a lot of people don't do trauma work, because the minute they verbalize it, they're scared. It's like the floodgates are going to open and they're not going to be able to handle what they're about to let out into the world. They feel like that resiliency is so broken. There's this big piece of them that they're not going to be able to contain that pain. And so they keep it there because I can't even say it. I can't even put it into words. How am I going to go to therapy and tell somebody when, so this is another area to go, well, you're all in a field where you're working with people, many of them hurt. And some of you are going to school to want to help people, young kids, students, and most of us are hurt people trying to help others build up their strength and capacity. It's a great way to deflect on our own feelings of whatever we're dealing with. I love to jump on and help somebody solve their problem, but to sit and go, in my own, it's painful. It's a lot of work. And so thinking of it, we do have to do what you just did to rewrite it. And I liked what's the magnet?
I don't know. I just always feel, when I went through school and I would write about, how people would move forward.
How do people move forward?
Because sometimes it doesn't feel like a choice. That's why call it a magnet. I mean, something happens and you think, I'll never laugh again, or I'll never, and
that's a
then
good
one
way to put
day,
it too.
all of a sudden,
Something happens
and you're laughing.
and yet you're laughing.
Yeah, and
And
you
how did
think,
that happen?
how did that happen?
Yeah. Okay. And a lot of times people will start to punish themselves like, how could I laugh?
Yeah.
How could I laugh at a time like this? How do I not be consumed in my pain? And guess what they will do?
Shut it up.
Push themselves back into the pain. Shut down that brief moment of happiness and go back to a pain where they feel safe in a phase where their whole body then is living as if it's in constant pain. And they will physically feel pain. They will physically feel sick. They will have headaches. They'll get migraines. They'll have back problems. Medical doctors will not know what to do for them. Antidepressants won't work anymore. So it's looking at how do I start to move forward and look at this differently in terms of there's a magnet there, but really, where's the magnet? Inside, you're the energy. So even when you place the magnet out here, what are you relying on?
Kind of a better version of yourself or
Okay.
something,
It could be that. How many of you guys rely on somebody else to make you feel a certain way? It's out here, right? Come on, I'm married. I've been in relationships. How many of us go, if you would just change, if you would just do this, I would be so much happier. If my boss would just recognize this about me, I would feel better. I would be more productive in work. Okay? So most of us put something out here, but the magnet, to me, it's an interesting concept because I think it brings up energy. But it also removes it as if it's unattainable, like it's not within, it's out here somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you still have some doubt that this could be you doing the work. It's some force outside of here that's pulling you. Okay, what would some people call that?
Well, what if the magnet is an addiction or something other than a person? It could be a
Oh.
drug or a food that's helping you get through it. So maybe it's not a magnet pulling you, it's your coping mechanism or something for you to just be able to maybe move on.
Do you want to share one of your favorite?
Coping mechanisms?
And remember, we have really good ones and we all have really bad ones.
Chocolate by far.
Okay.
Or
Well, chocolate
food.
gives you that
Yeah.
feel-good hormone, right?
I mean,
How long does that last?
Probably a couple minutes, but I'd bathe in it if I could.
Right, okay.
It's just that sweet, that gives me maybe 2 or 3 seconds of happiness.
Right. And then that sugar gets that dopamine going in the brain, okay? So we all have those, I don't want to call them good or bad because we don't want to, but stuff that's better, more healing, and then stuff that's more hurtful. So that's how you kind of balance that. We all have them. But what do we usually like to do? If we're surrounded by a room and we're all kind of watching other people, do we examine our own behaviors or do we look at what others are doing? What's a good example of that somebody wants to be really open about? Could be anything. Let's say somebody just lost their partner. And they're in a community and they show up and there's a celebration and they show up and they're smiling and they're happy. There's a lot of eyes on this person. What are the minds thinking or what are the images coming up for them?
could be judging them for moving forward even, like how could they go so quickly? Or,
How in the heck are they able to come here and smile
yeah,
when they just lost? Okay, so probably a majority of the room is thinking that. Why? How are our brains trained to think? The worst. So our negative thoughts, assumptions, beliefs way outweigh our positive. So one person in that room might look at that person and go, oh, thank God she survived. She's out here, she's smiling. She's out here living life. I now can see how I can survive the death of my partner because I'm seeing her doing it now. Yet majority of us are thinking the exact opposite. And so I don't even know if there's that one person in the room who is thinking that. But you can all become that person by starting to tell that to yourself. So whatever those worst fears are, you rewrite it and you say, and I know this is hard to say out loud. Does anybody want to try this? This is going to be the most difficult thing, and it's going to be yucky, and it's going to hurt like hell. Yet I will survive the loss of my mother. If we as human beings were not meant for survival, and we all perished when we lost somebody that we loved, but nobody would be in this room right now. Yet I think that's our number one fear that we live in daily, is that we cannot survive the loss of someone that we love so much. And it hurts to rewrite that sentence, but it's one of the most healing things you can do to get your body out of blocking love and giving love. Because you're not really loving somebody if you're scared you're going to lose them. And every time you see them, you think about not seeing them again. You didn't spend any time with them. You spent time worrying how you're going to function without them. So does anybody want to practice that out loud? Because it is empowering to say, it's healing to be able to say the reality of that situation. I'm not just saying, let's positive think this away. That doesn't work, right? I'm not going to say, oh, just keep, seeing her doing this, doing that, and make sure you tell them this and tell them. No, we have to tell ourselves that so our brain believes it and sends a message of healing and love and security to our body. So when we're around that person, we can truly love them and feel their love for us without any blocks of our cognition that gets in there and scares the shit out of us for no good reason. I do this with every single patient. I think eventually it comes down to this. Even little kids, and whatever they come in for, I have this talk. It feels like it comes out like this now. I've had it so many times. We're built to survive loss, even the loss of ourselves. That detached feeling, maybe many of you are starting to think like, oh boy, I really live detached from myself. And how can I tell myself, how can I truly love myself so I could feel that love? Anybody want to rewrite their sentence and say it out loud? Okay. Next thing, I want you to start to think about, bring yourself back to that little kid that you drew, if you were able to come up with one. And if you weren't, try to think of yourself a little bit older. And I want you guys to think about things that you thought just wasn't for you. In your head, you were like, oh, I guess I'm not that smart, or, oh, I guess I'm not the favorite kid, or whatever came up in your mind for you. What did you form at that age by 7? What did you start to believe about yourself and your abilities, what you should and couldn't do? And I want you to focus not on all the positive stuff. I hope you guys had a lot of positive things that were feeding your brain. Most of us had stuff where we clung on to, like I said, the negative. It impacted us on a visceral level. We believed it. Write it down. Because you still believe it today. You could think about it in the classroom. You can think about it amongst your siblings. You can think about it sitting there with your parent or parents. What stuff was fed to you? I'm not this type of person. Oh, I shouldn't be doing this. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I'm not very good at this. Okay, who wants to share?
I can share a couple. I haven't shared.
Beautiful, okay.
Not as smart as my sister, and I was too quiet or shy. Those were the 2 things I remember from growing up.
Okay, so now can you phrase those where you say it to yourself?
Like reword it?
Reword it where you're now owning those
Make it
statements.
more positive?
No,
Oh,
just exactly the way it was read to you, the way you filtered it through your brain,
How I was viewing that.
your belief.
Just that I was always going to be quiet and shy and maybe not connect with other people as well for that one, I think.
Okay.
I just always remember thinking that I never knew as much as her about anything or, sure.
You couldn't live up to what she's doing, okay? So for you, something around you, and a lot of times it's the messages, some of you may even have trouble putting it into words, but this was on TikTok where just recently, and I just recently figured this out, but it's changing the way I do therapy. We all don't get the words in our head. We all don't have internal chatter. Some of us get images instead of words. And some of us get abstract words that make no sense. But to you, it sounds like yours came up in words. And I'm shy. I don't connect well with people. I'm quiet and I'm always going to be that way. But my sister, she's smart. She's the smart one. She does everything well. And I don't live up to her. Does that sound okay, so that comes in, okay. Who else, great, thank you. Who else wants to share? One more, there you go.
Sharing bad feelings is a burden on other people.
Oh, beautiful, okay. So do you wanna write that like you own it?
I burden other people when I share sadness or anger with them.
Okay, so you can remember being a little kid and hearing that from somebody.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a hearing it directly, but I grew up in a situation where someone had a mental illness in
Okay.
my family. And so it was a practice of, as children, we don't want to add to what's going on.
Okay, so because your sibling struggles, you don't add to that. We have enough. You don't tell us what what's going on with you.
I can deal with it on my own, right?
You
I don't need to
can
give
handle that.
somebody else.
You're the strong one. You don't have those issues. Take care of it on your own. You're just adding more burden, more responsibility for us as maybe parents. Okay. So are some of you guys having these light bulb moments? So that dialogue, whatever's said, and like she said, sometimes our parents didn't just sit down and look at us, or our parent or whoever we spent most of our time with, they didn't just sit down and say, you're not good enough, or you need to do better. You're not going to be a good basketball player. I mean, look at you, you're clumsy, whatever they're saying, right? They don't say that. They make little comments and we piece things together. We observe their behavior and how they treat us and how they treat others. And some of them sadly just did come right out and say it. But it was a combination of the way our brains were interpreting. And then remember, whatever we tell our brains, what do our brains do? They believe it as truth. So when we're functioning, I'm 45, we're all still functioning at this internal whatever image of ourselves or what we tell ourselves, it's still there. So what do we need to do during this time to try to get that? That's what kind of like your subconscious, maybe we weren't aware of it till we just wrote it down. Like our worst fears, maybe some of it's subconscious. We're not just living it every day, but when you bring it up, it's like, oh boy, that really does dictate a lot of my behavior. It's like driving on autopilot. Have you ever driven somewhere and then realized like when you get there, oh boy, I don't even know how I got here. That's your subconscious. It'll take over when your conscious brain, those of you who are in here, you're thinking, you're feeling, your brain is alert, it's tuned in and you're paying attention. You're going to absorb a lot of this. And when that subconscious turns on, that's where when we're little, our brain can't filter out the bull. That higher level, it's just taking it as fact and it's storing it there. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm not supposed to be the smart, I'm not the athlete. And they do it in the classroom. You got the artist, you got the smart kids, you got the kids who struggle, you got the outgoing kids, you got the shy kids. And it's like, that's put into our mind as if it's true. So how can we be resilient if we focus mainly on most of the stuff that we are unable to do, are incapable of? How do we ever build up our strength set? If we focus on our 3 little things that we feel good about, that we know we can do well. So this is why this work is so important to do, because if you hit something heavy and hard, which COVID did for many people, people didn't have the internal know-withal to be able to pull out creative ways to cope in their house. They weren't able to distract, they had to feel. And so if you're not able to go in there and challenge where you've told yourself you're weak, it's ingrained. And then so now you know all that's taken away. When you experience something, you got to rebuild. You got to find something else to help your body restore, make sense of the world. And so when you're going through a chaos, like a stressor, it's kind of disconnecting. How do I find my path? How am I able to take something that is all over the place and make it make sense? So I can physically feel calm, like my body was meant to be. Our bodies were created to feel peace, love, secure. And only in brief moments should we feel fearful, anxious, or stressed. And that's under like threat. But most of us live under threat that we perceive as coming, and we're trying to prepare for it. And then so this is where I just want you to think about, how do you start to build your own resilience? It didn't come to me until a year later, where I'm very verbal. I talk as if all day long, talking as if somebody's listening to me. And it never stops. But after my trauma, I didn't talk as much. I felt so insecure. I felt so fragile. But I started to get these images. And I was not an artist. Nobody ever told me I could be one. It was really obvious. And that went all the way through my doctorate. I never could create anything artistic. And I tried. And I went and I thought, why did I start to get all these images in my head after this trauma? Because I couldn't put things into words. And so I started to create the images in the simplest form I could with pastels, and I put them on so that you guys could see what I started with. And not these nice oil ones. I just grabbed a Crayola, so you don't need anything. But I was flooded with all of these like beautiful images. And it was mixed through my Catholic faith, which I was struggling with. And it was mixed with all of the images of what I was learning about what it means to be a Anishinaabe. And through those images, I had to get them out of my head. And so later, it was years later, probably about 5 years later, I started to think, where did that come from? Like a creativeness that I didn't have in order to solve this problem that I didn't have a solution for. And then so I finally looked up, well, what happens when you're in a coma, medically induced coma? This is years later. Nobody explained it to me. Nobody talked about it. And I was a psychologist and I didn't want to figure it out. But when I finally did, it's a state of deep unconscious rest. And I was like, oh boy, I wonder if being in that state, my brain rested for 4 days and it recouped, and it wasn't that I didn't have art. It was just way hidden. I didn't believe I had it. So I didn't try to use it. But through rest and recovery, your brain is able to start to form, and connect again, the networks. It doesn't regrow, it doesn't change places. It just starts to bring stuff up. And so many of us, I believe, have these unconscious ways to like cope creatively, and we're just so unaware of them. And so we're the only species that forces ourselves to stay awake, to not sleep. Even the sun, it comes up. There's no backup plan for lack of rest. God didn't, whoever you believe created this earth, nature did not expect us to try to stay up through darkness or sleep. Our whole universe is set up so that we physically shut down chemically from the light of the sun and the darkness of the night. And we're sitting there drinking caffeine, trying to stay up all night, sitting on our phone to try to produce something, and our brain is depleting. And so we feel depressed, anxious, unhealthy, unwell, unhappy. And we're not allowing our brain to rest and recover and rejuvenate so that we can get out there. And before I had this, that was me. I was a doer. I still am a doer, but now I'm very aware that if I don't let my brain recharge, I'm depleted and I'm not as creative. And so Jung is one of the psychologists who, they're real early ones, where when you start to really hone in on what's underneath and bring to yourself the time to rest and recover, what can your mind tell you about what you can do instead of what you can't? And then that last picture is being able to look in the mirror and start to see a clearer picture of yourself. And what does it look like to fully be yourself? Let's talk on. So just really think about that, because we're basically almost done, but how many of you have heard that? Like, be your best self, live your best life. Okay? How many of you have ever or said to somebody, oh, I need to work on me. I'm taking a break. I need to find me. And I always tell my patients, well, that's kind of BS, because it's not like one day you go, oh, there I am. Now I want to get back into this relationship with you. There's no end to finding ourselves. There's no break we can take. It is an ongoing journey of introspective work, and it has to be done daily so that we can start to unravel all the chaos that's stored, where we're just kind of acting without really knowing why. When we've heard those things when we were young, or we seen them, or we felt them, we believe them. So if those 3 things you wrote about yourself, we don't know if that's true or not. Okay, I can't sing. I never could. I still try. So it's not like everything's meant to be, but there are things that you guys have that you may have thought you don't. And if you don't start to untap that, how do you know what your potential is? And so that's where you start to think, why is this work important? Why do you need to start this work now? Don't be like me and wait for me, God put me in a coma, like slow down. I'm just shutting you down, like forcefully. You won't sleep, you work all the time, you're anxious, you're running on this, you're starting projects, you're busy all the time, your blood pressure is high, everything. And he literally just shut me down. I didn't have a choice. But he's like, look at what came out of that. And it didn't happen like this. It took years. I'm still doing this. This was 10 years ago. And that's everyday work of building up something that can help you cope. So the other thing you want to think of, it has to be from a perception that you can handle. Everything you believe about yourself was based on the perceptions of how our parents or whoever raised us seen the world. So when they say trauma and hurt is passed along, that's how their perceptions. So if you as a person view the world as unsafe then what will you pass along to the people that you care about? So I do a workshop that gets into the full turtle medicine teachings. And so that's something that that we can, you can look on my website whenever I have a workshop. And it goes into much more detail about the work. Like I said, it spanned 10 years. But what it has come to, it started with knowing these turtle teachings before my trauma, just the basic turtle teachings. And I was using that to help my patients learn about self-care. And when I had my trauma, I had to learn about self-care. And that turtling technique didn't work for me because it wasn't developed by me. And so I had to come up with my own image of what that meant for healing. And it starts with a symbol. So this is the part of your brain that you can use right now. If you take a few breaths, okay? Look at that turtle. And you're probably not feeling much. And so I looked at it and I thought, okay, what does that look like to me so that I can start making my healing way? And I went like this, okay? That's the symbol. And I said, that's the back of a turtle. And I was totally traumatized when I did that. But that symbol is now based on all of the work I do. And it's all of the work I create artistically. And so after this symbol, I got brave and I started filling it in with some art, like coloring in blankets, those symbols I said I was seeing. And then after I got a little bit better, I started to go, oh, okay. I branched out a little bit, but I was still connected to this symbol, my safety. And then I was like, okay, I started to put they started to become women. And then my art started to expand to the point where now I create pieces without needing the symbol at all to do it. I'm creating full oil paintings. And this has been a slow, I just did an oil painting this past month. It doesn't happen every day, but the progression to one black and white symbol has led to me painting huge pieces of art. And when I was a kid, I was told, you are not an artist. And I have some of my pictures. You wouldn't believe it. But now the stuff I create it's full. But it was allowing that inner voice and trusting my intuition. I didn't know a thing about art. I just knew I was flooded with healing images when my words were shut down. And so every time I create something new, I have to go with my gut and trust whatever comes out on that paper without worrying about what anybody else thinks about it. Whether they think it's art or not does not matter. It matters that you're trusting your intuition. That's your true self to let something out and allow yourself to. That resilience, just like the mosaic, this is 10 years of me. And I would tell people, oh, never go outside that symbol. But when you start to heal and your brain starts to integrate those hurts, you'll allow yourself to step out a little bit more. And you'll be able to create more and more. And that's about experiencing a feeling of love that many of us maybe feel uncomfortable with. It's not love from others, it's love for self. And then you're going to be able to love others so much better. Thank you for coming. And I really enjoyed the discussion. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing with me. And we have our website and you can check out, and I'm starting a podcast. It's called Psychologists Say, where I'll be talking about a lot of these things. So that's coming this fall. Thank you.